Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Barrie Real Estate TV, a weekly web series I do in partnership with 705contracting.ca. I'm your host Luc, a real estate broker with the Knowles Woolsey team at RE/MAX Hallmark Che right here in the beautiful city of Barrie. I have a guest on the show this week, and we're going to talk about the Residential Tenancies Act and some issues landlords are having in terms of the Landlord and Tenant Board being closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and some issues they may be seeing and what they can do about it right after this. Welcome back. So I have here with me today Teri Landriault of Landriault Legal Services. She's a licensed paralegal who deals specifically in residential tenancy matters, helping out landlords and tenants where she can to find out mediation and things that they are done properly to make sure that everybody's on the same page and we are making money and having happy tenants and happy landlords. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got into it.
Happy landlords, yeah. With about the better part of 10 years in property management, I felt there was a need for our company specifically to have an on-staff paralegal, so I decided to go back to school, get my paralegal license specifically with a focus on the Residential Tenancies Act and Landlord and Tenant Board matters. So helping all of our clients and anyone else in the area across Ontario dealing with tenants who may be not paying rent or having issues with their tenancies, any kind of eviction matters, and as well as mediation between tenants and landlords if need be.
Right. Because obviously, I mean, you know, we all hold the horror stories about non-paying tenants and tenants trashing properties, but most tenants are good tenants, right? So it makes sense to know what the landlord's responsibilities are, what the tenant's responsibilities are, so you can try to hopefully, you know, a lot of your job's going to be dealing with problems, but you also want to educate people in avoiding problems, right? Because if you have happy tenants, they're going to pay their rents, they're going to take care of the property, and that's really important, right?
Absolutely.
So, I know that things are a little different right now. Normally, landlords have recourses in terms of going to the Landlord and Tenant Board when there's issues, and we've all heard about delays and things there, but right now they're actually closed. They're not doing hearings. What kind of problems are you seeing that causing?
It's a huge backlog. We were thinking that it was going to be, you know, thousands of applications coming in after the COVID-19 shutdown. It's actually more than we could have ever imagined, the backup of applications that are coming in, because with people being laid off and out of work, tenants are finding that they can't make the rent. So landlords are giving as much sort of leeway as they can and ultimately having to file with the board. So there are no hearings. Evictions have been banned. So even if you do have a court order to be able to evict your tenant, the sheriff will not do anything right now. They've been banned from doing that. So everything is kind of at a standstill with the board, and all of the courts in Ontario really in general have been shut down to a degree. So landlords are still able to issue N4 notices, which is very, very, very important that you get that done right away. And you are still able to apply to the board with an L1 application for non-payment of rent. Applications are still being accepted. Hearing dates have not been issued because they don't know when they're going to be open and available to have these hearings, but getting yourself in the queue and getting yourself in line is crucial at this point, because, you know, if and when the board opens up, potentially September they're looking at, I think that's a best case scenario, but you want to be in line and you want to be, you know, one of the people that's going to get pushed through, because with the backlog, it could be months and months and months. It may not even be this year. So.
And that's the important designation, right? I mean, I know a lot of people have been talking. There was, I think it's quieted down a bit now, but there was kind of a movement online to stop for tenants not to pay rent and things like that, and people thinking that they can get away with not paying rent because of this. And obviously that's not true, right? I mean, you may not be evicted tomorrow or next week, but the process is still going to take place. You're still going to be in line to be evicted, and you're going to have a lot of things to catch on on. You can't just not pay rent because there's a pandemic, right? So there's still going to be eventually a recourse for this. So that's important for people to know. I know, again, we talked about this on a previous episode as well that I did with some landlords, but a lot of landlords did their best to try and make arrangements for people who couldn't pay right away. I mean, if you have good tenants, you want to work with them, right? So people will try to, say, we'll reduce your rent for a few months and you can get caught up on it later, or we'll defer some payments, and again, you can get caught up when you get back to work and that kind of things. Yeah. Not all landlords can afford to do that, but the ones who could and the ones who would, which was great. But some tenants were awesome about that, and other tenants were like, no, I'm just never paying it back, right? Well, you can't do that, right? So we talked about that. And then again, some landlords just, are also living paycheck to paycheck and couldn't afford to do those programs, right? They still have mortgages to pay and things like that. So situation is different for everybody. But if you have a tenant who either did not want to work out a plan and just refuses to pay it, or who for whatever reason just couldn't pay their rent, what should the landlord be doing right now?
The first thing you need to do is send that N4 notice. And N4 notices are a very important document. They do need to be perfect. They do need to be flawless. If they are fatally flawed, they will be thrown out by the time you eventually get to your hearing, which could be a year from now. So those do need to be perfectly done, identifying all the proper information. And there are instructions online for those as well if landlords decide to do them themselves. Paralegals are always available to help out and even just review those documents. But you've got to get the N4 out the minute that the rent is late. So if their rent is due on the 1st, 2nd of the month, if it's not paid, send the N4. If the tenant pays, the N4 becomes void, but at least you've covered yourself off. So the first thing you want to do is get that N4 to your tenant. That gives them 14 days plus mailing time to make that payment. And then once they haven't paid that and that N4 is not satisfied, you can move forward with the L1 application, which is your application to the board seeking a hearing to be able to terminate the tenancy for non-payment. Again, even if they do pay down the road, you've insured yourself that you're covered off in case they don't. So, they pay, everything's fine, copacetic, it all just gets canceled anyway. So there's no harm, no foul. You've just protected yourself because, again, if you don't do your N4 and your L1, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months goes by, you're that further back in the queue to get a hearing to get these tenants evicted. So you definitely want to get that N4 as soon as possible, as soon as your tenant hasn't paid. And
that's the key, right? I mean, as we talk to a lot of my clients who are investors and landlords, and sometimes they'll say, oh, so-and-so didn't pay, and you ask them, did you issue the N4? And they, oh, no, they're a good tenant, they're just having a hard time. And I get that sentiment, but really, issue the N4, and then if they pay, you tear it up, it's void anyway, right? But if they don't pay, now you're not another 14 days behind, or another month behind, or another 2 months behind, right? So you've got to do the paperwork, because it's got to be properly just taken care of, or you're going to find yourself in a situation where they haven't paid in 6 months, and then and now you're in trouble with your mortgage as a landlord because you don't have income.
It's exactly the case. I do N4s on the 4th of the month just to give tenants a little bit of leeway, but I do them every single month religiously. And our tenants will get upset in the beginning if they don't understand. A little bit of education, explain what the N4 is. Don't worry about it. When you pay, the notice becomes void. They understand now. It's just the landlord protecting his interests, but you have to get that N4 out as soon as possible.
And really, like the N4, it's not even like there's a record of this to the tenant where they've had 20 N4s over the last 2 years. I mean, really, as long as they pay in 14 days, it's gone and that's it, right? So there's no harm, like as you said, no harm, no foul to do it, right? I mean, obviously, you're going to be aware of what tenants you are consistently late on the rent, but I mean, you would be anyway, right? So it's not like this goes against them when they're looking for other apartments and that kind of stuff. It's right. So as long as they do eventually get that paid, but obviously sooner than later is better, right? The landlord has bills to pay too, right? Their mortgage is due on a certain day, and they count on that rent. So I mean, obviously there's big companies who rent out, complexes and stuff, but most landlords are you and me who just own 1 or 2 houses, and they, if you don't pay rent, we can't pay the mortgage, right?
And we have a number of clients that have that happening. I mean, you can defer your mortgage only so far, and then you've got to pay your mortgage. So if your tenant's not paying, a lot of landlords, this is their investment. This is where they've put their nest egg. So when a tenant doesn't pay, it can be really detrimental to their investment and can cause them to lose their property.
For sure. And it's been actually really hard for landlords to get deferrals on their mortgage, right? For your personal mortgage, it was a bit easier, but for the for investment properties, the banks were way tighter on that, right? Some were not giving deferrals at all. So definitely, for sure. What else has been happening right now due to this that landlords might be seeing that they might need advice on?
It's mostly a non-payment issue. Again, a lot of tenants are struggling. We have seen a really positive rate. We've had 89% of rents coming in fairly on time, and with the rest just trickling in. I think most of it is just education and making sure that your tenants understand that this isn't a free pass. I mean, I know there's a situation with the Circa benefit, which is with commercial rents, where landlords are being forced to eat 25% of their profit, and that's not the same for residential landlords. Right. So tenants just really need to be educated that this is an obligation. I mean, your rent comes first, and your groceries and your car payments, and just like everything else, it's got to come first. That's why the government gave out the CER benefit, and to help tenants make sure that these payments are being made. And while evictions can't happen now, they may be able to happen down the road. So sure. That's the main one. Aside from that, there have been little bits of changes with utilities and things like that. Tenants are still responsible for that. At the end of the day, the big companies are still getting all their money, so it's just a trickle-down effect. So
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for being here. I know that my viewers also always really appreciate getting any advice they can in terms of investment matters. We do a ton of different investment deals with people, and like I said, most of them are great landlords who love to take care of their tenants, but sometimes problems come up, and we have to deal with them as we do. So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, guys.